I am sure there's an age limit on that, and I exceeded, Senator Monning. Thank you. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I associate many of the same concerns and comments as Senator Monning. We've made so much progress over the past 25 years, and smoking cessation programs administered by the state, and certainly in the County of Riverside, when I was on the Board of Supervisors, we had some great programs and incentives to get people to quit smoking, not only for their own health, but it was a tremendous savings for the County of Riverside that, you know, is pretty much self-insured. It was spending $300 or $400 million a year treating emphysema, treating cancer, treating asthma, and all the other associated problems with smoking. But historically, since the inception of the Act of 1988, California has really become like at the bottom as far as a percentage of population that has stopped smoking. Isn't that true? That we're like ranked, you know, close
second to Utah.
Utah is the best, but so we've done an absolutely outstanding job of enhancing the health and safety of our residents, and certainly my concern, and I'll just elaborate a little bit more on these e-cigs, is that we're getting an addiction of a whole new class of citizens, the millennials, that don't understand the addictive nature of nicotine being just as addictive as heroin. And while they're getting hooked on these, then they're going to see a television movie and somebody smoking a traditional cigarette, and they're going to say, well, that looks pretty cool, I'm going to go to that. And so I think you're going to see, if we haven't already seen it already, is probably a surge in traditional tobacco products that is going to be an alarming problem for us all to solve. So you mentioned the overall advertising budget is about $13 million, roughly speaking, and you talked about a lot of television. Are we using a lot of social media communications with these commercials? Because that's what the kids are looking at. They're looking at these. They're not looking at the boob tubes anymore.
We are. So as part of the campaign last year, we do traditional broadcast television, but we also purchase a lot of digital. So the Wake Up campaign was featured as, if you're on YouTube or, I'm getting older. Yeah. The music services, iTunes, or I can't think of the one now that is very popular, where there's those little breaks between your free songs and you'll get like a little 15-second ad. We advertise there. Good. The department has very prominent social media through its Twitter, Facebook, and its social media, and promotes these ads as well and places these ads on the website. So we're bus shelters. We're trying to get where people are and when kids are, and especially in like a bus shelter environment where you might see a lot of people using these products. So yeah, we're definitely trying to reach through non-traditional means.
Good. I think that's going to be very important. Mm-hmm. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. We had two other accounts.
Why don't you go ahead, the research account and the unallocated account.
Yes.
Let's hit those.
So in the research account, we're asking for $970,000. The vast majority of those funds will go to the California Cancer Registry, which is another program we're incredibly proud of. Mm-hmm. And those dollars are going to, what we're really trying to do is automate the systems within the Cancer Registry to the point where we'll have less requirement of doing paper records or going out and auditing actual cancer cases in facilities that aren't as using electronic health records as prominently. So the quicker and more effectively we can automate the system, the more timely we're going to have information on cancer, which is really important for things like clinical trials, so that researchers can get to those individuals quickly while there's still a chance to do something productive for them. The other funds will go to one of our programs in the Environmental and Occupational Disease Control Division to look at a little bit more community research aspects of the e-cigarettes and more exposures and health impacts as compared to some of the more health education aspects of the tobacco control program. In the unallocated account, we're asking for $822,000. the majority of those funds are going to be used to augment some of the existing asthma programs that we operate. Our unallocated account does fund an asthma program as well as some federal funds. And then additionally, some of the work that that particular program is working on deals with environmental justice issues of site assessment that they do in terms of exposures to toxic chemicals and things like that. So we're trying to create some performance standards for ourselves, and that could be emulated in how we look at environmental justice projects. And we hope in May it'll all be there. So active transportation I'm sorry.
Let's allow LAO and Finance and public comment on this one, then we'll move on. LAO, nothing. Finance.
Barbara Taylor, Department of Finance. So first I want to apologize. I don't have my Prop 99 charter. I should be able to answer that question. I will send that to Michelle.
She has it here. Okay. See, and it's closer to 14 million. Yes, thank you.
I just do want to say that, I just want to caution a little bit. The increased amount of Prop 99 we have this year is some savings from the 14-15 year. So we have done a very good job of getting the message out, which means tobacco tax is by its, what it's supposed to do is decreasing. So, these are one-time funds. I just want to make sure that we, conveyed that message.
Got it. Thank you very much. Any public comment on issue number 10? Prop 99. See none, we'll move on to issue 11, the Active Transportation Safety Program.
Thank you. So we're here today to ask for $733,000 in reimbursement expenditure authority and 4.5 positions. So the write-up was excellent. There is a lot of history associated with this program, as what previously was the Technical Assistance Resource Center housed out of the University of California, San Francisco. That was the contractual agreement to provide technical assistance services to Caltrans. But through negotiations and UCSF being fine with no longer providing this resource, we entered into an interagency agreement with Caltrans to provide the technical assistance resources to the Active Transportation Program. Internally, we call it the Active Transportation Safety Program. And it's our main task is to provide technical assistance to the non-infrastructure related programs that Caltrans is implementing as part of its Active Transportation Program, which was created back in 2013. So this component also had a current year implementation. So just to update some of the information within the write-up, I'm happy to say that some of the staff who had been working for UCSF historically competed for and were hired by the program and are providing a lot of nice continuity and knowledge from what they had done for years with UCSF. And we've hired all of the staff.
Right.
And we're plugging away on providing the services and also continuing to work with Caltrans on extending the interagency agreement for years beyond what we have through right now, which is through 2017. What we really want to do is to get communities interested and aware of the opportunities that exist for them from the Caltrans funding. And just to give you a few examples of the things that we're up to, we've provided tools that communities can use to determine how walkable their community is. So they can go out and audit their community to determine, is it safe to walk down these streets for kids, and what kind of services or support could a community use to make their community more walkable, which in the end we hope will get more kids walking to school and ultimately reduce car trips, which reduces our carbon footprint. And we're very interested in reaching and providing these services to underserved communities. So in addition to these toolkits, we also provide webinars, and a couple of webinars that are coming up. One in March is going to focus on tribal communities and getting them interested and taking advantage of these funding opportunities. And then in May, we're going to focus on rural communities. So we're focusing a lot of outreach to those particular communities. And in rural communities, as you probably know, there aren't a lot of sidewalks. It's a very treacherous environment to walk to school. So those are the kind of things that we're working on.
Great. Elio? Finance? Colleagues? Any public comment on the transportation program? Doing my part. I send mine on the school bus every day. Issue number 12, protecting children from the effects of lead exposure. Here we go, Senator Stone.
Thank you for
Page
your
38 on
patience,
the
sir.
agenda.
If it meets with the approval of the committee, what I'd like to propose is providing a brief overview. The write-up is excellent. Answering the specific question related to the number of kids that we intend to reach. Answering, it's not necessarily a question, but it's related to the comment and recommendation about the Department of Healthcare Services and their intent and what they're doing with the state plan amendment as it relates to the childhood lead poisoning prevention program, and then providing a little information that I hope will answer Senator Stone's question, if that's good. Yes, okay. So we're here today to request an increase of $8.2 million annually, $6.8 million in local assistance, and $1.4 million in state operations for 4 years that would come out of the Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Fund to extend the services that we currently provide to children within the state. So what we currently do is children that are part of public assistance programs get blood lead tested at ages 1 and 2. And the children that are on public assistance are probably the largest beneficiaries of this particular program. So we get those results in our program, and when we identify a persistent level of blood lead levels, 15 micrograms per deciliter, 2 tests, or we get a one-time test of 20 micrograms per deciliter, we provide case management services to those children. So that's a public health nurse going out, an environmental scientist going out and identifying and mitigating what is the actual lead causing these high levels in this child, and providing the appropriate services and liaisoning with healthcare providers. And we follow those kids for 2 to 3 years to get that level down. For kids that we identify that are less than that threshold, so between 10 micrograms and 15 micrograms, we provide other services, basically outreach, health education, where we can, trying to mitigate what that risk is and identify what that risk is, and provide some monitoring and follow-up, but it's not that extensive case management service. So what we're essentially proposing here, given a variety of CDC recommendations and CDC's own findings on at what lead level can cause, irreparable brain damage or reduced IQ, we're proposing to lower those levels for each one of those case management categories and the other services. So for case management, it would now be 10 micrograms to 15 micrograms, and for the other services, it would be 5 micrograms to 10 micrograms. And we believe that we have sufficient funds sufficient dollars in the fund to provide those kind of services for 4 years, as in the proposal. Why we're asking for local assistance is because we're required to deliver the case management services, but how we can do that is to contract with local entities. So 43 counties accept our funds to provide the services themselves in counties. The other 18 counties, 15 counties, 58 counties, the remaining jurisdictions, because the state's required to provide the services, we provide the services. So that's why there's a local assistance component, and there's also a state component, because we will have to provide those services given those lower levels. So that's overview. What we hope to reach in terms of estimated numbers, given the reduced levels, is 400 more children per year on the case management side. And in the other services, we estimate about 7,000 kids will get those services. In regards to the Department of Healthcare Services, so just to clarify some previous comments, DHCS had been working on a state plan amendment, not specifically in relation to this particular BCP, but they were working on an amendment, and they continue to work on amendment with CMS to try and identify and evaluate what's the most appropriate way to determine what should be, how do they define their case levels, whether it's a number or whether it's CDPHs or whatever CDC recommendations. So they continue to work on that with the intent and effort to maximize all federal matching funds for the program. So the intent is to address that.
And it is my intent to ask DHCS when they come before this committee to give us an update on where they are with that state plan amendment, because we shouldn't leave Medicaid dollars on the table if they're available, and they would be through Medi-Cal.
But just to clarify as well, if a child is a Medi-Cal beneficiary and is in those ranges of these new levels, they're going to get the services.
When you mentioned earlier about the children you prioritize, those that are on public benefit programs, all public benefit programs, CalWORK, subsidized child care, which?
So Medi-Cal, CHDP.
So it's health-related public benefit programs.
Yeah,
okay.
I'd have to look into the CalWORKs and those other programs. But
just when you said public benefit programs, it just occurred to me I didn't know which ones. Okay.
I'm sorry, I should have clarified.
Any questions? Senator Stone?
Is there a certain geographical area that predominates where we see incidents of lead poisoning in the state? Or is it pretty well scattered?
I would say it's scattered, but I would imagine in newer communities or newer, which could be in your district, some of the newer developments and such, you're not going to get the paint issues that you had, pre-1978. So the success story of the program is that we've seen fewer kids. I gave numbers that show that it is maybe a bigger problem, but it's because we haven't historically addressed those kids at those levels. So I think the numbers jump a little bit in the first year or two, but then we expect to see the same sort of success that we've had over the last 20 years with the program, and another reason why we're only right now asking for 4 years of the funding.
And is the nidus of the lead intoxication specifically the former lead-based paint that kids are, getting off the walls and ingesting, or is it coming from other sources?
So,
I can take this one. Sure. I mean, there's two main areas that contributors. It's lead-based paint and older housing, and I think geographically it's fairly widespread, but urban areas tend to be bigger problems, and the other is soil. So those are the two main things that we look for, and I think they range from 30 to 70% of the exposure for the kids that we investigate. Those two, each of them, there's quite a range depending on the area. The other things we look at are, take-home lead. If a parent works in an industry where there's potential lead exposure, other odds and ends like lead and candy, ceramics, home remedies, imported cosmetics sometimes have lead. There's a number of things that we look at.
Okay, thank you.
The LA County, the Exide plant, the battery plant, there's been some real issues. Senator Monning.
Thank you. In light of the crisis in Flint, Michigan, what do we do to assure that something like that isn't happening in the state of California with erosion of lead-based pipes and delivery of water?
So what I can tell you is that, the drinking water is in the State Water Resources Control Board, and there's a lead and copper rule that EPA has implemented, and that's being enforced, and I know the drinking water program is looking at that. What's probably most useful here is that our program, the childhood lead program, and looking at all these exposures that I just mentioned, it's extremely rare that water is one of the potential sources for a child. So in the thousands of children that we've investigated and evaluated over the years, it's the other things that have caused it in California. So we don't anticipate that type of situation specifically will arise here, but we obviously want to look at the whole picture, and that's the reason for this proposal. There's impacts at any level of lead probably some level of health impacts. And so we have the resources and ability now to go to a lower level that Greg Oliva just described, to be able to look at the various sources and try and mitigate those for more kids.
Thank you. And then I don't know if this has reached the state level, but in my district, the health department's identified a source of grasshoppers that are they're a delicacy. They're salted, fried, and chipolines, and it's a source of lead, and it's identified to come from Oaxaca, where the grasshoppers are near a lead smelter.
Yeah.
And are you aware at the state level of efforts to either remove those products from the market, or, I mean, I know there's an education effort, but if we know these are carriers of lead and a source of raising lead levels in children, can there not be a public health intervention to remove known
So that
lead
situation,
concentrates?
we haven't had any detections of that in a number of years, but our Food and Drug branch was very involved with that. And our Food and Drug Laboratory, they actually, last time I was down there, they showed some scanning electron micrographs of lead particles in the flesh of these grasshoppers. And the purpose for that was to show the grasshoppers had internalized as opposed to just being on the surface of them. So it was apparently in the plants that they consumed. But that situation has not repeated itself. But we do have surveillance for those types of things. And again, the two programs can connect. So if we have a child that's got high blood lead and they've been eating imported lead candy with lead in it, or imported grasshoppers, that's how we can find out about some of these things.
Thank you, and it does sound like it's on your radar, so thank you.
It's a very interesting one.
Yes.
Who would think grasshoppers?
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. LAO, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members, staff. Meredith Worden with the Legislative Analyst's Office. We would just echo the staff comment in the agenda today related to federal funds. It does appear there's an opportunity to leverage additional dollars to the extent that there's alignment in the policy, and would potentially maximize the reach of the program.
Thank you. Finance? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Environmental Containment Biomonitoring Program, page 42. Issue 13.
Thank you. We're here today to request 2 permanent positions and $350,000 from the Toxic Substance Control account for 2 years. The positions that we're asking for were established 2 years ago as limited term positions and are set to expire on June 30th, 2016. So the biomonitoring program has principal mandates to evaluate blood and urine samples for the presence of chemicals in Californians, to conduct community-based studies, and to also evaluate the work that it does to see what the impact is on removing those chemicals from the workplace or wherever they take place. A principal example of how that has worked is looking at flame retardants. So there's, historically there was research on flame retardants and their presence in the body and how they bioaccumulate, and California had set standards for a higher fire resistance in its upholstery and other products. So these were very persistent chemicals in our society and where we lived, worked, and played. The legislature eliminated the use of these flame retardants through statute a few years back, and just last week we saw the results of some studies that showed that breast milk showed fewer levels of flame retardants. We hope largely as a result of this policy change. So, we do some research to identify the presence of chemicals, known carcinogens in people's bodies. They will hopefully affect, positive policy change, and then we continue to evaluate what did that policy change do in terms of exposure, but also to look at what sort of substances might be used by manufacturers as substitutes to those products. So we have the ability to identify and monitor those sorts of chemicals as well.
LAO, Finance, members, public comment. Here she comes.
Afternoon. My name is Veena Singla. I'm a staff scientist with the Natural Resources Defense Council, an international nonprofit that advocates for science-based health protective policies that protect human health and the environment. I wanted to take a moment to appreciate Senator Mitchell's comments at the beginning of this hearing about the right of Californians to access services and health care, and add to that the right of Californians to all have a clean and healthy environment, safe water to drink, safe air to breathe, and safe places to go to school and play. And the California Environmental Contaminant Biomonitoring Program that's a mouthful. It does help to ensure these things because it monitors for toxic substances in the environment and in people so that we can understand where toxic chemicals like lead, like pesticides, like air pollutants are a problem and where people may be disproportionately exposed to these. This is especially important for communities that are overburdened by sources of pollution like pesticides in the Central Valley or air pollution in urban areas. So I would like to express our support for the budget request and also mention that the program had received funding from the Centers for Disease Control. California's program is nationally recognized. This CDC funding is phasing out because it's only meant to support its pilot funding for the program. So we do request that the state help to fill in that shortfall with an augmentation from the general fund. We request $1 million, and we will follow up with a more detailed letter detailing our request. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to issue 4, medical marijuana, and the variety of bills that are listed here to address the issue. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.